Hey everyone, if you're enjoying these intense stories, please hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Thanks for watching. The courtroom in Brussels smelled of old wood and nervous sweat. Rain hammered the tall, arched windows, turning the place pollared outside into a gray blur. October in Belgium always carried that damp chill that seeped into bones. I sat in the third row, back straight, hands folded in my lap. My suit charcoal gray bought last week from a discreet tailor in Excel's felt like armor. Across the aisle, my wife Elise sat beside her father, Felipe Moro. She wore the navy dress I'd once complimented her on during our honeymoon in Bruges. Her hair was pulled into the same tight chignon she used when she wanted to look untouchable. Felipe, silver-haired and impeccably tailored, stared straight ahead as if I were already invisible. Their lawyer, Mata Laurent Dupont, stood now, voice smooth as polished marble. Your Honor, my clients request the court to consider Monsieur Adrien Lefebvre's limited financial acumen. As a school dropout who never completed his secondary education, has demonstrated an inability to manage substantial assets responsibly. The family estate in the Ardennes, the investment portfolio, and the company's shares valued collectively at over 12 million euros would be placed at grave risk under his sole control. I felt the courtroom's eyes shift to me. Whispers rustled like dry leaves. Elise didn't look my way. She never did anymore. The judge, a woman in her late 50s with sharp gray eyes, nodded slowly. Monsieur Lefebvre, you may respond. I rose. My voice came out steady, almost calm. Your Honor, I would like to correct the record. I did leave school at 16, yes? But I never claimed to be uneducated. I paused, letting the silence stretch. I simply chose a different path. Philippe snorted softly. Elise's shoulders tensed. I turned slightly toward them, not accusing, just stating facts. When Elise and I married 8 years ago, her father was the one who insisted I sign a prenuptial agreement. He called it prudent. I signed without hesitation. I had nothing to hide. I looked at Motor DuPont, but the prenup also stipulated that in the event of divorce, the marital assets those acquired during the marriage would be divided equally, unless one party could prove gross mismanagement. DuPont smiled thinly. Which is precisely what we intend to prove, monsieur. I nodded, as if agreeing. Then let us begin with the facts. I reached into my briefcase and withdrew a slim folder. First, the family estate in the Ardennes. Purchased in 2015 for 2.8 million euros. Title transferred solely to Elise Morolofov. Renovations completed in 2017 at a cost of 1.4 million paid from the joint account we shared. The property is now valued at 5.1 million. I oversaw every phase of the renovation. The architect, the contractors, they all reported to me. I placed the folder on the table. I have invoices, contracts, correspondence, all signed by Elise. Philippe's jaw tightened. Second, I continued, the investment portfolio. Managed through Banque de Graph, Petercam. Initial capital, 4.2 million euros. Deposited in 2018 from the sale of Elise's late mother's jewelry collection. The portfolio grew 18% last year alone. I made the decisions. Elise signed off on every transaction, set down another stack of documents, and finally, the company shares. Moreau and Fields, the family import-export business. When Philippe suffered a stroke in 2020, he asked Mimi to step in as interim CEO. I accepted. Under my leadership, annual revenue increased by 37%. The shares I was given as compensation now represent 22% ownership. I looked directly at Elise. You were the one who suggested I take the role, remember? You said Papa trusts you. Your family. Her eyes flickered just for a second. Felipe leaned forward, voice low but carrying. You were a charity case, boy. I gave you a chance. You took it and ran. The judge raised an eyebrow. Monsieur Moreau, please. I smiled faintly. No, Your Honor, he's right. I was a charity case. A boy from Charleroi, son of a steelworker and a cleaner. No diploma. No connections. When Elise brought me home to the grand house in Uccle, Philippe looked at me like I was dirt on his shoe. But he needed someone to run the company while he recovered. So he swallowed his pride and handed me the keys. I turned back to the judge. What he never told anyone what? At least never told anyone is that I turned down 3 higher-paying offers from competitors. I stayed because I believed in the family. Because I loved my wife. Because I thought we were building something together. My voice softened. I was wrong. I opened the final folder. Last year, when Elise filed for divorce, she and her father began quietly transferring assets. Offshore accounts in Luxembourg, shell companies in Cyprus. They thought I wouldn't notice. I laid out bank statements, transfer records, emails. But I did notice. I've been watching quietly for months. Lipa's face had gone pale. Elise finally looked at me. Her eyes were wide, frightened. Your Honor, I said, I am not asking for more than my legal share. I am asking for what is fair. And I am asking the court to consider whether the accusations of financial incompetence are accurate. The judge studied the documents I had submitted. Monsieur Dupont, your response? The lawyer cleared his throat. We will need time to review these new submissions. Of course, I said. Take all the time you need. Sat down. The judge declared a recess. As people filed out, Philippe approached me in the corridor. His voice was a hiss. You think you've won? You think this ends here? I looked at him calmly. It ended the day you told your daughter I wasn't good enough. The day you made her choose between us. The day she chose you. He stepped closer. You'll never be one of us. I smiled, small and cold. I don't want to be. Elise stood a few meters away, watching us. She looked small, suddenly, fragile. I walked past her without a word. Outside, the rain had stopped. The sky was the color of wet slate. I stood on the steps of the Palais de Justice, breathing the clean air. My phone buzzed. A message from my lawyer. They're panicking. They'll settle, generously. I typed back. Good. Then I deleted the message. I didn't need their money. I needed them to remember. To remember the boy they dismissed. To remember the man they underestimated. To remember that sometimes revenge isn't loud. Sometimes it's quiet, precise, and utterly devastating. I turned up the collar of my coat and started walking down the hill toward the city center. The wind carried the faint smell of roasted chestnuts from the Christmas market that would soon open in grand. Place winter was coming, and so was the end of their world. Months later, the settlement was signed in a notary's office on Avenue Louise. Philippe looked 10 years older. Elise avoided my gaze the entire time. They kept the Ardennes estate, the company, the name. I took half of everything acquired during the marriage cash, investments, properties in Ghent and Knock. I moved to a quiet apartment overlooking the canal in St. Jan's Molenbeek. No grand house. No servants. Just space to think. I started a small consultancy firm. Nothing flashy. Helping family businesses restructure? I never advertised. Word spread anyway. One evening in early spring, as the first blossoms appeared on the cherry trees along the canal, my phone rang. Unknown number, I answered. Adrian, Elise's voice. Small, hesitant. Yes. A long pause. I'm sorry. For everything. I watched a barge slide past, low in the water, carrying crates of tulips. I know, I said. Another silence. Papa's sick again. The doctors say it's his heart. I said nothing. I don't know what to do. I closed my eyes for a moment. You'll figure it out, I told her. You always have. I hung up. The next day I wired a small, anonymous donation to the cardiology department at St. Luc Hospital. Enough for the best surgeon in Belgium, not for him, for her. Because even after everything, I still remembered the girl who once laughed at my terrible French jokes, who held my hand under the table at family dinners, who whispered, I love you in the dark. I remembered, and that was enough. I walked to the window, opened it wide. The air smelled of rain and new leaves. The past was done. The future was mine to shape, and for the first time in years, I felt free.